Welcome to another episode of MicroShiner's Life Distilled. Brian Cary here, and I'm with Stephen here at Golden Moon Distillery in Golden, Colorado.
Thanks for coming to visit.
Yeah,
we
thanks.
appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me. This is great. Yeah, that's just going to roll. 360 camera for those of you who are just listening to it. We also do this as a webcast, so it is in full 360, so you get a sense of his small distillery. But it's not going to be so small coming
Not
up
for much
here soon,
longer.
right?
Where we're sitting, people can see the parking lot with cars driving by.
Yeah.
The actual asphalt that's right outside this door is not going to be there on Monday.
Really?
They're actually ripping out a big hunk of the parking lot to bring in the new fire mains.
Okay.
As part of the expansion.
Perfect.
They're going to be ripping out part of the parking lot on the other side of the building to install our new sewer line.
Okay.
When you all come back in next year, and I'm hoping you're going to come back next year,
Yeah.
this place is not going to look like it does today.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm loving how small it is, because this is kind of a testament to how craft spirits are going. You are expanding, and that's quite a substantial space next door that you're moving into. And you started off with just this small space and a couple small stills, which are very old, and I want to learn the history on these guys too.
Okay.
But now you're moving into such an awesome space. So that shows that craft spirits are moving forward. And
Absolutely.
doing well.
We founded this company in 2008, and when we founded it, there were only a handful of distillers operating in the U.S. I actually tried to start a distillery back in 1991. I actually applied for a basic permit and the whole bit, and was actually talked out of it by none less than Fritz Maytag, who I owe a debt for that conversation and that advice. We had a brewery when I was in graduate school and tried to do a distillery. Made some really lousy single malt.
Okay.
And don't mind them, that's the construction crew.
Awesome.
Had made some really lousy single malt, and Fritz sat me down. He used to give a lot of advice to small brewers and distillers, and actually in those days just brewers. There weren't a lot of distillers.
Yeah.
And he said, Steve, you need to wait 5 years. And it took me about 25 to actually circle back around.
Okay.
And open another distillery. Almost exactly, I think it was 23 years.
Okay.
From the first basic permit to the second basic permit.
Okay.
With a lot of road miles in between, and a lot of weird experiences, and a lot of distilling training, and some other booze business experience, and some other non-booze business experience. And so then we founded in 2008. We moved into this facility in 2010. And the intent with this little 2,000 square foot facility was to do an extended period of R&D and really develop and bulletproof a family of recipes.
Okay.
And then to take them and get them on the market and see what people thought. And so we've taken a very different path than the average small distillery.
Yeah.
We've been around a lot longer than most, and yet we're still a lot smaller than many. We've got a fairly large portfolio now. We have 19 spirits. We have won some of the top awards in the industry.
Okay.
We get lots of press, lots of accolades, but we're still tiny, and it's now time to scale this. We're in 14 states here in the U.S. Today we're in 3 markets in Europe, though given the trade issues that we're currently having, we're having a little bit of an issue with customers not wanting to place orders because of tariffs being a moving target, and because European consumers are not really thrilled with buying American products right now.
Yeah.
But having said that, we still have high hopes for Europe. We have high hopes for Asia. And we're literally turning away additional business here in the U.S. until we're through this expansion, because as you can see by the stills behind me, we don't have a whole lot of capacity.
Yeah.
I mean, when we have people come here, and I teach a lot of classes. I had a class about a year and a half ago where I had 18 distillers from across the U.S. in here for a week teaching them botanical distillation. And I won't say who it was, but they're one of the better known craft distilleries in the U.S.
Okay.
The guy that runs it was sitting here, and when I told him how much business we were doing, what our volumes were out of this little facility, he said, Steve, I got to ask you a question. And I said, what's that? And he goes, where's the rest of your distillery?
Yeah.
And I just started laughing. I said, yeah, it gets pretty crazy in here at times.
Yeah.
Well, by November of this year, we won't have that problem anymore.
Wow.
We'll have almost 10,000 square feet of production space. We'll have almost 100,000 9-liter case production capacity. And then within the following 18 months, that will grow to a 250,000 case capacity. And the bulk of that additional increase will just be adding more stills. Okay. And those still slots, those spots, all the infrastructure will be put in between now and November.
Okay. No, I saw all the stills. They're still in crates next door.
There's a few small ones in crates next door. So when we're done, we have 2 antique stills behind us. When we're done, we'll have 9 small antique stills. We'll have 2 500-gallon Scottish-style whiskey stills. And we'll have 4 270-gallon multi-purpose stills. Okay. To make everything from brandy to gin, etc. You know, they may or may not all be identical. Right now, the plan is to make them all identical, but I may change the still head configuration on at least one of them as our demand for our Applejack grows. Okay. Because that's a brandy, and you need a slightly different configuration of a still than you do for a liqueur. But you know, we're off to the races. I've got the first 2 bigger stills under production right now at Specific Mechanical up in Victoria. Okay. So they're building a 500-gallon whiskey still, and the first of the 4 270s, as well as a large lauter tun for our malt whiskey. Okay. And a bunch of other bits and pieces. I have 3 antique stills that are currently being rehabbed down at Vendome Copper and Brass. Okay, very cool. That are essentially duplicates of that still there. Okay. And so there'll be 4 of those by November. Okay. In the operation, and then as you saw next door, I've got 2 Jacob Carl pots with columns on them. I've got an old French brandy still, which we're going to repurpose to make a very limited production malt whiskey using floor malted Colorado grown barley, malted by Todd Leopold over across town here. And that malt whiskey, I'm not going to tell you the name yet, but that malt whiskey will only be available off of that little teeny pot still. Okay. At the distillery. Okay. You will have to come to the distillery to get that specialized malt. Awesome. That's and good. Then, of course, once we're up and running, 30 to 50% of the production capacity will go into our single malt. And our single malt, which is currently not on the market just because we can't make enough of it, it won a double gold at San Francisco a couple of years ago at the World Spirits Competition. Nice. Pretty highly regarded. Okay. Bottles have been selling at auction over the last year for in excess of $1,000 a bottle from that first cask. Whoa. Pretty cool to have people actually seeking out, you know, this low volume whiskey that we've made and really hunting it down and willing to spend a lot of money to get the few bottles that are floating around from that first cask. That's awesome. It's kind of awesome. It's kind of flattering. That is. When you come back here, or if you come back here in about 4 months, you're going to see a 30-foot tall silo right outside the store, feeding into a big lauter tun, feeding into what eventually will be 2 500-gallon whiskey stills. That's going to be cool. And it's going to be cool. That is. And I'm really excited. It's been a long, slow, very deliberate build up to this point. You know, I tell people this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Yeah. You know, I do a fair amount of consulting, not as much as people would like. I give a lot of advice to other distillers because I believe that, you know, every bad glass of craft spirit hurts us all. So, you know, anything I can do to help distillers that are starting out. And I warn them, you know, I'm not trying to sell my consulting services. Right now, I'm not taking new clients. I just don't have the time. Yeah. I am building a large distillery in Ireland right now for some folks. Very cool. Much bigger than anything I'll ever own, put it that way. Right. Incredibly well funded. I'm partnering with another distiller who you might know of, Dave Pickrell, on that project. I can't go into details. Yeah. Because it hasn't been made public yet, but you'll hear about it. Okay. It's going to be cool. Okay, that is. I've already, you know, I've been back and forth to the UK to meet with these folks several times. Okay. And when that one comes to light, it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. But I just don't have any additional bandwidth. You know, I probably shouldn't even be doing that project. Right. Except it's just such a cool project. Exactly. I had to get involved. Jump on board. Yeah. In fact, that's why I brought Dave in. I can't do it by myself. I just don't have the time. So things are really kind of cool right now. They're exciting. The trade issues are a little scary on the side, but It's nothing we can't manage,
Uh-huh.
which is a luxury that we have with where we are in our growth pattern, which a lot of other distilleries don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So there are distilleries, small distilleries that are making 10, 15, 20, 30% of their revenue on exports that are in jeopardy now because of the trade war that we're in.
Wow.
Golden Moon is blessed, if you will, that we're just happen to be at the right point where it's very easy for us to pivot and push more in a domestic direction or more in a direction of other export markets while still maintaining the relationships we spent years building in Europe, so that we can, when this settles down, begin to work with them more closely as we've been over the last several years.
No, that's great. I mean, the fact that other countries are now starting to see how American spirits are, the cream is floating to the top. You know,
well, and the worry I have is, you know, we've started to build a demand for American craft spirits in Europe. We've grown the demand for American spirits in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America. The cocktail revolution started in America with the types of spirits that Golden Moon and our fellow small and medium-sized distillers produce. Mm-hmm. The big brands are all booming. Beam, 30% of their sales last year were in Europe.
Wow.
The risk is that as demand for American spirits cools because of this trade war, that the bigger producers will need to find other places to park that juice, to sell that juice. So Beam and Brown-Forman and et cetera may be forced to flood the U.S. market with low-cost whiskey.
Wow.
And that could very easily have a negative backlash on the entire small and medium, aka craft, if you will, distilling community in the United States. And you know, there's 1,600 of us now that are small and medium owned, predominantly family owned businesses that are really economic drivers in every community we're in. And every one of us is in jeopardy now because of this. And it's frightening. And it's not just us, the distilled spirits world, it's every industry in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already hearing about, you know, big companies like Harley-Davidson having to move production overseas. The largest snail producer in the United States had to lay off a third of their employees and is talking about their being in jeopardy of being able to continue operating because of these tariffs. And then, you know, last night, the U.S. enacted a whole rift of new tariffs on China, and those will result in more tariffs back in the other direction.
Yeah.
So, you know, here I am, you know, my family's bet everything on this distillery.
Yeah.
We have no investors. Mm-hmm. This is our money. We're a family business. Mm-hmm. And we're not wealthy. You know, everything my wife and I have, we've earned. Yeah. You know, we both come from very humble beginnings.
Right.
And so, yeah, we worry about it. Like I said, I think Golden Moon is blessed that we're in a really good position to be able to pivot. And we're doing a lot of products that other people aren't doing, which are unique and different. And so that makes us a little more resilient than perhaps a lot of the other small distilleries around the country that are only making whiskey or only making gin or only making one or two products.
Right. So your spirits, now going into your spirits, you have a lot of European-inspired spirits.
I do, absolutely. So I'm kind of a geek. And
most distillers are.
Most distillers are. You know, I started working in restaurants and cooking, and actually I started as a scullery kid when I was 13 in a coffee shop in Reno, Nevada, scrubbing pots. But I'm a trained saucier. I've worked as a bartender. Yeah. I've done pretty much every job you can think of in a normal restaurant except sous chef and executive chef. I even spent a couple years part-time working as a sommelier at a very high-end restaurant on the West Shore of Lake Tahoe.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I've got a pretty good palate.
Yeah.
A palate that is good enough that it's allowed me to become a pretty well-known international spirits judge. But it's also driven me to create or recreate a family of spirits that's pretty unique. Yeah. One of the things that I'm sort of known for in the industry is I have a very large collection of rare books on distillation. Okay. Most of those are actually from Europe. Okay. You know, the center of the distilling world in the 17 and 1800s was France.
Okay.
all the way up until 1915 or so.
Okay.
And then it sort of moved to Germany. And so what you find when you look at distilling technology and you look at how spirits are made, really the documentation you're going to find comes from predominantly France and then later Germany. What you find in the Americas are books that are heavily based upon those older books. And beginning in about 1760 and going all the way up to about 1900, the American written books on distilling tended to be either very focused on basics, where the European books were focused on journeyman distillers that had had a formal apprenticeship training.
Okay.
5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years training, and there were more reference manuals. And then once you see going into the 20th century, you see a vacuum in American publications from about 1915 to about 1935. And in 1935, a book comes out called The Chemistry and Technology of Wines and Liquors. And that book is a blatant plagiarization of some of the better French books from the 19th and early 20th century.
Yeah.
But it was really designed to help bridge that gap where America had lost all of our trained distillers during Prohibition.
Right.
So I've built this huge library, which includes at this point hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, dating back as far back as the early 1500s, and obviously coming up to modern day.
Yeah.
And I've used that as references. Mm-hmm. And I've looked at the type of cocktails I like to drink.
Yeah.
And I like, classic pre-Prohibition craft style cocktails. And I look at what those ingredients are, and I'm like, wow, someone should make that.
Yeah.
And I try not to copy other recipes. Mm-hmm. There's only one recipe that I've ever made that's not a Golden Moon formula.
Okay.
And that is our Mer de Piquant. We use the original formula, which ceased production in the 1880s.
And that's what's being bottled right back here, right?
I believe it is what's being bottled right back there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Bottled.
So there is a modern Piquant product on the market in Europe, but it's a shadow of its former self.
Okay.
It's the most difficult product we make. It's the most time-consuming, painful product we make. But all you need to do is take the Brooklyn or a Liberal or a Pecan Punch that's made with that formula versus any of the post-1900 Pecan products.
Okay.
And taste the difference in the cocktail.
Okay.
And it speaks for itself. Wow. It's much more complex. It's much drier. It's higher in alcohol content. And that all shines through in the cocktail.
So I'm not familiar with this spirit. What exactly is in it that makes it so like you copied this formula? So
well, I didn't actually. Not
going to copy yet.
No. Let me tell you what happened.
You borrowed it?
I didn't borrow it. So years ago I fell in love with absinthe.
Yeah.
And absinthe is important to the conversation for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of walked away from distilling at that point.
Okay.
And it was absinthe that brought me back to distilling.
Okay.
And originally, when I founded this company, it was just to make a few hundred bottles of premium absinthe. Yeah. And of course, that's all changed.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars later, that's all changed.
Yeah.
So I'd always junked for rare booze. Mm-hmm. I'd always bought anything old and weird I could find. And so I had several old bottles of Piquant. I was familiar with the history. I also grew up in northern Nevada where the Basque population is one of the largest Basque populations outside the Basque country. They're sort of, let's call it the national drink of, this is James, everybody. Say hi.
James,
hello.
What's happening?
Not much. How's everyone doing? Give me a tour.
James is our production manager, and we've got some customers in the tasting room, so he's pouring a little gin.
So we're in production.
We're in production.
We're open.
That's cool.
Distillery's open. This is great.
Anyway, so the Basque up in northern Nevada tend to drink a lot of a cocktail called a Pecan Punch.
Okay.
And it's a cocktail that's made with Mer Piquant, or made with a substitute now, which is an Italian Amaro for Mer Piquant. And the modern Pecan Punch is very sweet, and it's lower in alcohol because of the Amaros that are used.
Okay.
But so I already had a taste for something along the lines of what a Mer Piquant was, going back to when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, when my family would go to Basque restaurants and my dad would give me a sip of his Pecan Punch.
Okay.
So I was predisposed to Ameripicon. So I started finding old bottles of this, and the old pre-1880 stuff just tasted amazing. It was funky, it was complex, it was herbal, it was dry, and that's a huge thing, it was dry. And as I started to build this library and go down this journey that started with absinthe and started making all these other weird or unusual liquors and liqueurs, I bought a collection from a woman in Provence that had been her great-grandfather's of books and papers on distillation. And he'd been a distiller that worked in Provence that had made absinthe, among other things. Mm-hmm. And as I'm sitting at a little reading desk I have in my house, flipping through this pile of old French papers, I found 2 sheets of paper, handwritten, and on the top of the sheet it said Amer dit Piquant, Philipsville, 1851. Now, the phrase Amer Piquant means Piquant's bitters.
Okay.
The phrase Amer dit Piquant translates as bitters the way Piquant said they should be.
Okay.
Philipsville is where Gaëtan Piquant, the man that created Amer Piquant, built his first distillery with the backing of the French army after creating the formula while serving as an apothecary in northern Africa.
Okay.
Now, he created the formula because he had contracted malaria, and it was to treat his own symptoms. The reason he'd contracted malaria was that he, like all other French troops in North Africa, was taking absinthe as an anti-malarial.
Right.
And absinthe doesn't work as an anti-malarial.
Mm-hmm.
So he contracted malaria, created his bitters, Amer Piquant, to treat his own symptoms, began giving them to the other French troops. The French army let him off active duty and funded what became 4 small distilleries in northern Africa, in Philipsville, which is in modern Algeria. And so it started to become incredibly popular. So popular that in the 1880s, he moved production from North Africa back to France and simplified the formula.
Wow.
It was subsequently simplified, a much bigger change in, I believe, 1904. I may be wrong on that date, don't quote me.
Right.
But it became an incredibly popular liqueur, a bitters and Amaro, etc., in Europe, and was the basis for a whole host of historical cocktails, the most famous of which is the Brooklyn, one of the 5 boroughs cocktails. But there's the Brittany, there's the Liberal, there's of course the Pecan Punch we've just talked about, and there's literally hundreds more.
Yeah.
And so the product was simplified multiple times during the 20th century, largely for cost and cost savings and production simplification reasons, to the point where the modern product that bears its name is, less than 20% alcohol,
right,
and only has a handful of ingredients, including artificial coloring, and a whole heck of a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
Where the original was a 9-step manufacturing process with dozens of ingredients. It was 39% alcohol with almost no sugar at all.
Right.
Very dry. And so here I found these 2 pieces of paper.
Yeah.
And they weren't a recipe. What they were the procedures for a journeyman distiller to make the product.
Awesome.
And I read through them, and I'm at the desk I was sitting at, I had this little shelf in front of it.
Uh-huh.
And on that shelf were 2 bottles of pre-1880 Piquant.
Awesome.
And I looked at the paper, and I looked at the 2 bottles, and I went, I can figure out how to make this.
Yeah.
And it took me about 2 years. The big problem is these were notes from a working distiller on how he ran the production line.
Yeah.
So there were various things that the recipe called for that might be common sense to a working French distiller in 1851, but to an American distiller in 2000 whatever,
Right.
I had no clue. So Curaçao Ordinaire.
Okay.
X number of liters of Curaçao Ordinaire. Okay, what was Curaçao Ordinaire to a French distiller in 1851?
Right.
So I had to go into my books, look at how Curaçao Ordinaire was typically made,
Yeah.
and then start experimenting. So spirit of quince is
Yeah.
another ingredient.
Okay.
Okay, what format is the quince in when you begin to work with it?
Right.
Is it a tincture? Is it a maceration? Is it a distillate? So I had to figure this out. I had 9 of these I had to figure out. And when I was done, I had the product that we now have on the market today.
That's awesome.
And it tastes almost exactly like the historical product that I have, except a little more peppery and a little hotter. And I was fine with that because the bottles I was dealing with were well over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And I figured they'd mellow it out a little bit.
Right.
So.
No, that's great. No, I was reading the description and I saw that you even referenced the man whom the
Pecan
recipe.
Punch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the one formula that we didn't develop ourselves. I mean, everything's historically inspired.
Okay.
But everything, we don't just open old books, find formulas, and make
Absolutely.
something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of our fingerprints on Amer Pecan,
Yeah.
on Amer de Pecan. But it's really his formula.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to stay true
Yeah.
to what Pecan Punch originally produced.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of what I've done.
Yeah.
And I know it's not here, it's over there.
Yeah,
but
I'll have to taste it. I'll have to probably buy a bottle, honestly, for this awesome story that I just heard.
Thank you.
That's one thing I love about craft spirits. It's like you could bring all these craft spirits back to your bar, and you will have some of the most unique, spirits from small batch distilleries.
The one thing about the Amer Pecan that I find fascinating is half the bartenders that taste it love it. They're sold immediately. They want it on their bar.
Mm-hmm.
The other half, because they're so used to dealing with modern Italian-inspired Amaros,
Yeah.
will say it's too dry, it's too bitter, it's not my thing.
Right.
And I actually had one guy in particular, one bartender posted on social media a while back, there was a discussion about Pecan, posted about our product and raved about it. Another bartender swung in and said, oh no, it's not right at all. And then he and I ended up subsequently talking, and he went back and revisited and he said, oh my God, I had no idea.
Wow.
And totally converted him.
Wow.
So.
That's awesome. That's exciting. Well, okay. Well, let's taste some gin. Let's start with some gin.
Okay.
And then we'll go into some more
So
stuff.
James turned it around the other way.
Yeah.
So this is our gin. Now,
Okay.
I grew up bartending, like I said, or working in restaurants, etc.
Right.
And as I said, I started trading in rare booze.
Right.
And I had a business partner at the time that I did some rare booze stuff with. Didn't do a lot of business in the rare booze world, but I did a little.
Uh-huh.
And we found a large cache of spirit that if you Google on the internet, it's known as the Hannisville cache.
Okay.
And it was predominantly 1863 rye whiskey.
Okay.
There was some bourbon. In fact, I still have about 15 gallons of that bourbon,
Wow.
which we'll probably do a special release on here next year through the distillery.
Okay.
But it also contained a 5-gallon carboy of gin. Now, this spirit was bought in Martinsville, West Virginia, off the shipping dock at the Hannisville Distillery
Mm-hmm.
by a gentleman that happened to be the U.S. ambassador to the Court of St. James. He
Okay.
bought it in 1904 because he believed Prohibition was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Took longer than he expected, but the family held on to these carboys.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to acquire the bulk of them. A few have since come on the market through other cousins, but
Okay.
I acquired the bulk of them. And much of that spirit, the 1863 rye, went to Europe, was bottled in sample bottles at my friend's distillery, and sold by him. And then we split the profits on that deal.
Yeah.
There is a small amount of spirit left that I have in my possession that we're going to bring out as well.
Okay.
But the gin that was in this was like no gin I'd ever tasted.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And so all that gin disappeared. We sold it all. It was gone. And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And so I went into my library and I started looking at how historical gins had been put together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things about my library is that there's a large number of maternomedicas or pharmacology books,
Mm-hmm.
because really distilling was a pharmacological practice up until the 20th century. And so you open these old maternomedicas and there's formulas for things that are clearly recognizable as spirits.
Wow.
Gin,
Yeah.
absinthe, creme de violet,
Mm-hmm.
creme de menthe. These things were all made by pharmacists, apothecaries, etc., and used largely for medicinal purposes.
Okay.
So I was looking at these old medicinal gins and I started to realize very quickly that the bulk of the herbs and botanicals used in the 17 and early 1800s to build a gin were the same family of botanicals, with the exception of your wormwoods, that were used to make an absinthe. And I realized I already had, because I was already working on absinthe, I already had most of the botanicals I needed to play with in my lab. So I went and got some juniper, and I started playing. And pretty quickly, I came up with a formula for Golden Moon gin. It's very different from any other gin on the market. It's very thick, it's herbaceous, it's got a huge amount of floral notes in it.
Yeah.
Probably 9 out of 10 people that taste this like it or love it.
Yeah.
And that 1 out of 10 doesn't like it at all because of the lavender.
Right.
You know, it's not everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
I actually have this theory, and that is that the people that don't like it had an evil aunt that used lavender hand cream.
Right.
Well, the sense of smell is such a huge and important sense when you appreciate a spirit. That, and that's the one complaint we get, is someone will say, I don't like lavender. It's too perfumey. But 9 out of 10 people totally either like or totally flip over this gin.
Right. No, there's a lot of lavender in there. That's nice though. I mean, I could see where it could be overwhelming. Because like you said, people don't like it, then it's like.
Well, the other thing I find, like I said, 9 out of 10 people tend to love this. The initial reaction on a lot of bartenders is it's too much to make a cocktail with. And then we start making cocktails, and the way we put this together, the huge amount of essential oils we extract really allows it to shine through and stand up to other ingredients.
Yeah.
So take the Negroni, for example.
Right.
A Negroni with a typical London dry gin, the gin will very often disappear behind the red bitter and the vermouth. And so a lot of commercial bartenders will instead of doing one part, we'll do 1.5 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of Campari or whatever other red bitter they're using, Contratto, etc., and then 1 ounce of vermouth.
Yeah.
And to make sure you still get some of the gin character. This stands up on a 1:1:1 ratio to anything you can throw at it, and the gin still comes through.
Awesome. No, that's great. I like that. So Negroni's one of my favorite cocktails. So I might have to grab a bottle of this gin too. Shoot.
You know,
I gotta check another bag.
By the time I'm done, you're gonna have a bottle of everything in the ship.
I mean, I might have to check another bag. No, this is great. It's very creamy. It's somewhat viscous. You know,
so
I like that.
Our little speakeasy, which is located in downtown Golden, I'd say it's the most unique tasting room in the country. It's regularly named as one of the top cocktail bars in the Denver market.
Wow.
Which is a big statement because we have some of the best bars in the world in this market.
Right.
And that's not me saying that, it's the world's 50 top bars saying that.
Awesome.
So, we have some amazing cocktail programs here in Denver. And to be ranked as one of the best, we actually named the top classic cocktail bar in Denver 3 years ago. It's pretty flattering.
Yeah.
But what makes it really cool is that it's all our own spirits. And so we at any one time have between 10 and 20 gin cocktails.
Wow.
On our menu in our own bar, and we sell gin cocktails all the time with this, and people love them. So it works.
That's great. I mean, is this how widespread is this distributed?
So we're in 14 states around the United States. We're in 3 countries in Europe. Our largest export market currently is Italy. Our European markets are the United Kingdom, Denmark, and Italy. Having said that, I've seen our gin in Spain. Magazines in Spain have written about our gin.
Okay.
I've seen our gin in Germany. There's actually one vlogger, YouTube guy in Germany that talks about spirits that's done 2 or 3 episodes on Golden Moon gin in Germany.
Cool. Excellent.
So the product is sort of moving around the EU on its own.
Yeah.
Because of their open trade borders. We are still shipping some gin to Europe. We do the regular gin in Europe. We do our port cask reserve, which is the same gin, but rested in port the way a Scottish whiskyman would finish a whiskey in a port cask. And then bottled, and that is selling well in Europe right now. And then we do another Golden Moon gin called Expeditionary Gin, which is similar to this in botanical profile, but a little drier with more citrus and some nice spicy notes.
Okay.
That is purpose designed for the UK market.
Yeah.
And is available through the Boutique Ginsey Company, which is part of the Master of Malt family of companies.
Okay. Fantastic. I guess my question is, can I find it in California?
You can find it in California.
Okay, excellent.
So
All
we are
right.
distributed in California by Henry Wine Group, which is one of the larger distributors in the state.
Okay.
And if your local bodega doesn't have it,
Right.
just tell them to talk to their Henry Wine Group sales rep and have them order it.
Okay. No, I might do that because this is okay. Sweet. Yeah, so that way I don't have to check another bag because if I can find
Well,
it
and if
locally.
you happen to be in San Francisco, one of the
Yeah.
top restaurants in San Francisco is Murad,
Okay.
and we are their house gin martini.
Oh, fantastic. That's good.
So-
That's good cocktail placement. If you can get on one of the house cocktails.
Well,
craft
and it's,
spirit.
it's a fabulous restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, the chef is amazing.
Yeah.
Their beverage director, Joshua Peter Smith, is a rockin' bartender.
Good.
And I'm pleased they decided to put our gin on their menu.
Awesome.
I think we've got 3 placements on their menu.
Okay.
So,
Good.
just
good.
saying.
Excellent. Well, let's move into the Applejack.
Okay.
Let's taste a few more stuff that's happening.
So this is our apple brandy.
Uh-huh.
It's 100% Colorado cider apples.
Awesome.
We
Good.
work in cooperation with a local cidery named Stem Ciders,
Okay.
and they crush and blend apples for us. We also do a little distilling for them for their Palma, which is sort of a cider port.
Yeah.
And what we do with this, we wanted to build a spirit that was apple forward, and it was at the same time an homage to the Applejacks that were first produced commercially in the United States.
Okay.
So the process of jacking technically is freezing and then extracting the alcohol, freezing and getting rid of those water crystals.
Right.
But when Applejack was first commercialized during the colonial period in this country, it was done in pot stills, and it was a single pass typically through a pot still, and then it was put in a barrel and taken to market. That meant there was no heads cut, there was no tails cut. It meant there was no long aging. The only oak input it got was in the barrel on its way to market.
Wow.
And so what your historical Applejacks were really more of a lightly oaked apple eau de vie than a true apple brandy. Everything that's on the market today is what I like to refer to as more of a French style apple spirit, in that they're going to be either double distilled or triple distilled or distilled with a column, and they're going to be put into an oak cask and let sit for months, if not years. And really the primary flavor input you're going to get is going to be oak. You're going to get some apple characteristics, but all that fresh green apple flavor is really in the front end. It's in the highly volatile chemicals at the front end, and usually goes out with the heads. And when you double and triple distill, you lose a lot of those apple characteristics.
Yeah.
So we actually process our fruit and our cider to get as much of the pectin out before we distill, which is where the methanol lives.
Yep.
So we can minimize our head cut, which retains a lot of that fresh apple note. We do a single pass on an old and very inefficient French brandy still, the one sitting right behind me.
Okay.
One pass. We lightly oak it, we put it in a bottle, and we're done.
That's awesome.
It comes off the still head at about 42. When we deproof, it's a few drops of water to get it down to 40 ABV. It's got this huge fresh apple note. It's not like any other apple brandy on the market.
Okay.
It makes wonderful cocktails. People drink it neat as well.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do with this is a Colorado Applejack Manhattan.
Okay.
It's 2 ounces of our Applejack, an ounce of Coqui Torino vermouth, though any sweet vermouth will
Yeah.
work.
Coqui Torino's good.
Coqui Torino's got some nice dimension to it. I like it. 4 good dashes of Angostura bitters,
Yeah.
stirred, served up with a good proper cherry, not an artificially colored
Right.
fake maraschino, but
Yeah.
something like an Amarone
Yeah.
or a Luxardo cherry.
Yeah.
You know, a good, nice, dark, natural, real
Absolutely.
cherry.
Yeah.
Serve it up, ice cold, in a cocktail coupe or a martini glass.
Yeah.
It's an amazing cocktail.
All right. Let's give it a go. Yeah.
So let me just get rid of that glass
definitely.
because we got lots of glasses here.
Cheers. Yeah, and then I guess that's. I know acetone is one of the byproducts, part of the heads, right?
Well,
and I know
You
kind of
get a lot
carries-
of things up front that smell like acetone as well. Probably
Yeah.
the biggest is methanol.
Yeah.
And, methanol is a lesser alcohol.
Right.
It does to the untrained palate taste a lot like ethanol, which is why it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
But if you get the solids out of the spirit and you watch the heads very carefully, you can take out just enough of the heads to get rid of that methanol and those other nasty compounds while protecting
Right.
the various chemicals that give you that fresh green apple note.
Excellent. Yeah. I just know like cheers. I know acetone kind of carries like a green apple like nose to it. Yeah.
It can, but that's not. There's several chemicals combined that give you the apple characteristic.
Yeah. This is fresh apple. There's no acetone in there.
No.
Definitely.
No.
That is so good. I haven't even tasted it yet. It smells like fresh apple.
So all the apples that we use in here are grown either in Palisade or down in Pueblo. And as I said, they're all Colorado. They're crushed here. We crush at the cider. We actually ferment in-house using our own strain of yeast.
Okay.
And it is a commercially procured strain of yeast, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
No, don't worry.
Guy's got to have his secrets,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm pretty open about everything I do. Yeast strains for most of my products are one thing I don't talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Because I tend to use atypical yeasts.
Mm-hmm.
Just my own preference. Everybody does it a little different.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one right way.
That's awesome. Sorry,
Thank you very much.
That's great. Oh, wow. That's that's fun. You definitely get the apples. And the fact they're using local stuff is awesome.
We're not, a lot of people are really wrapped around the axle by using only local products.
Yeah.
I love to support our local farmers, our local growers. For our soon-to-be released Colorado absinthe, we're growing our own wormwoods and other herbs at a local farm.
Excellent.
Fruition Farms down in Larkspur, owned by Alex Seidel, who's a James Beard Award-winning chef, a local chef restaurateur. We partner with Alex, and we grow a bunch of stuff on the farm down there. But at the same time, I'm a firm believer that whatever I put into my spirits has to be the highest quality ingredient I can find.
Right.
So, for example, lavender for the gin.
Yeah.
I'm importing French ultra-grade culinary lavender from Provence.
Wow.
Why? Because it gives me a better result than the local Colorado lavender. There's nothing wrong with the local Colorado lavender, but I'm not going to get the oomph that I want using what's grown here. Provence has a longer growing season. It's got a different terroir.
Yeah.
I'm working with farmers there. I've met the farmers I'm sourcing from.
That's great.
I would much rather be able to work with people that are growing the style of product is probably the best word I can use. With my regular absinthe, I source wormwoods and other herbs from France and Switzerland. I've been to the growers' farms in the Val de Travers that are growing our wormwoods for the regular Redoux absinthe. I'm growing my own wormwoods using their seed stock, but here in Colorado for Redoux Colorado. Redoux Colorado, while it's still an absinthe, is noticeably different, dynamically different from our regular absinthe.
Wow.
And it's all about figuring out the right inputs. So with the Colorado Applejack, our Colorado cider apples are going to taste different than a Michigan cider apple.
Yeah.
And so our Applejack's going to taste different than if we made it with Michigan cider apples.
No, that's fantastic. That's really, I love it. I mean, it's almost like it's like a vineyard designated wine, almost.
We do try.
Colorado, yeah.
So we're going to move on and talk about some whiskey now?
Yeah, let's talk about some whiskeys.
So as I said before, we make a malt whiskey. We're not selling it today. It's not in front of us. It's Golden Moon Colorado single malt. We took a double gold a couple of years back at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. All the malt for that whiskey is malted right down the road here at a large malting called Golden Malting, 4 miles away. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of a little company called Coors.
Yeah.
And they make beautiful malt. It's amazing malt, and we make amazing whiskey with it.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that today.
Right.
We're talking about Gunfighter.
Okay.
So Gunfighter is a whiskey line that we developed. It's to flush out the cocktail program in our tasting room.
Okay.
And we buy young bourbon and rye from a small distillery or medium-sized distillery in Owensboro, Kentucky called O.Z. Tyler.
Okay.
And they do a great job for us. We bring that young whiskey in. We get California port-style French oak wine barrels out of Napa that have held California port-style wine for 6 to 9 years.
Okay.
We take, and just like I was trained in Scotland to do, we put the young rye and bourbon into those barrels and we finish them with port. So this isn't going to be something where we're changing the entire character of the whiskey. Angel's Envy, which is a beautiful product, long ages their whiskey in port barrels.
Yeah.
And it really takes on more of the character of the port than it does of the underlying whiskey. And that's fine. People love it. I drink it. What we wanted for these two products was we wanted to retain that classic bourbon or rye character and just use the port to round it off, soften it up, and add richness. And what we've resulted in is a spirit that is give or take around 2 years old, that is 100 proof, that makes beautiful cocktails, and because it's 100 proof, will stand up to anything you can throw at it.
Cool.
But yet, because of the input of the port, it becomes friendly enough and smooth enough you can sit and sip it neat or on a rock all night long with a big smile on your face.
Awesome.
So we started just trying to sell the Gunfighter in our own bar, our own tasting room. We're now, every market we're in around the United States, all 14 markets, carry the Gunfighter now. And then we're selling this in Europe currently. Though, of course, as I mentioned, there are now some pretty restrictive tariffs on American whiskeys. So we'll see what happens over the next year. These products are going into India, assuming that there's no retaliatory tariffs with India, this fall, and they're going late in the year into Japan.
Very awesome.
So the other thing we do with the Gunfighter line, so the main line are the double cask, which refers to the port cask, rye and bourbon. We also do odd lots and orphan casks. So in the past, I've sold several variants of Gunfighter 7. Gunfighter 7 have been 7 to 8 year whiskeys that I've acquired from friends in the business, a few casks at a time, and I bottle them, explaining exactly what they are, and we put them on the market. It's always amazing whiskey, or I'm not going to sell it. We're getting ready to launch Gunfighter 13, which is strangely 12 casks of 13-and-a-half-year-old Tennessee bourbon that a friend of mine found. They were sort of an odd lot from a big distillery. And that'll be coming on the market in about 60 days. And it's really sweet, very almost honey-like, 100-proof bourbon. And I can't wait to get that on the market.
I know. What's that going to go for a bottle?
Oh, probably about $85.
$85? Oh, that's not bad. 14, 15-year-old bourbon?
13-and-a-half-year-old
13-and-a-half-year-old bourbon. Okay.
So I've been drinking a little bit on my own, and I've made a few cocktails with it. But
where's that at? No, I'm sorry.
It's in storage. It's in storage. Those 13 casks are actually sitting in a warehouse in Kentucky right now.
Fantastic.
Not the one that fell down last week. I feel really bad about that. But
what happened?
So one of the Sazerac Corporation warehouses collapsed last week. About 18,000 barrels.
Whoa.
Yeah, scary. Scary. Thank God nobody was hurt. I know people that work for that company, and it made me cry to see it. And the first question I had was who's, because they store some stuff, who do I know who had whiskey in that rick house? And actually, that was all Sazerac product. They're salvaging a bunch of it. It wasn't a total write-off, but it was a pretty scary event.
Yeah, I can imagine. 18,000 barrels. That's a lot of whiskey.
It's a lot of whiskey.
Wow.
So, and most of that whiskey was very old whiskey.
Yeah.
So.
It's a bummer. Well,
that's not where my barrels are sitting.
That's not where your barrels are. So
and as soon as we're done with this expansion, I'll have 6,600 barrel slots of my own, and awesome. I won't have to store stuff at other people's rick houses. I mean, as you can see behind us, we store a few barrels. We have room for a few hundred more next door in the second small space. What you didn't see when you took the tour is on the other side of the big still house here. We're going to blow out the wall in about 18 months, take over the space behind that.
Wow. And
that'll give us another 6,000 slots.
Awesome. Good. It's a nice expansion. Congratulations. This is going to be good.
Anyways, you want to taste a little of the whiskey?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm going to start with the bourbon.
Okay.
So this is 60% corn, 34% rye, and 6% malted barley. Started in American New Oak, finished in French Limousin oak barrels that previously held California-style port wine, made in Napa.
Okay. So Napa port. Cheers. Nice spice, nice heat.
It's got that nice corn sweetness. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. What's the proof on that? You just said
50%.
50%.
100 proof.
So 100 proof.
So everything we do in the Gunfighter line is 100 proof.
That's nice.
I have a philosophy in everything I distill that higher proof and lower sweetness makes a better cocktail. So the gin is 45, the apple brandy is 40, The Genepe we're going to taste in a second is 50.
Mm-hmm.
All our liqueurs are between 30 and 40.
Yeah.
Even our Amaro, the Amaro de Picon, is 39.
Wow.
So everything is going to be higher alcohol and a little less sugar.
Mm-hmm.
The result being a better cocktail.
Okay. That's a great bourbon. That is. It's really nice.
Thank you very much.
I like that.
We won a few awards with it. I don't really like to go out and enter a lot of competitions with most of my spirits, especially the Gunfighter. Someone else did distill it, though we've certainly changed it and made it our own.
Good.
But people like it. It sells incredibly well, and
Yeah.
more often than not, when I'm at home and I'm making a cocktail, I'm actually going to pull the Gunfighter Rye
Okay.
or the Gunfighter Bourbon, but probably
Okay.
more of a rye guy.
Yeah. Me too.
So
I enjoy it.
this
I
is
enjoy rye.
60% rye,
60%.
34% corn, 6% malted barley.
So essentially, the reverse of the bourbon.
Exactly.
Nice.
Distilled on a column still with a pot doubler.
Okay.
Both of these. Aged in new American oak. Finished again in the same port barrels that we used for the others.
Mm-hmm.
And it tastes like this.
Cheers. Nice. Nice. That's good. That's great.
Thank you.
That's good. Yeah, good rye happening there. Again, get the heat. It's a little hotter finish, but I like that. I mean, that's usually what you get with the rye too.
Well, some of that's the spice coming out of the grain.
Yeah.
And I actually prefer ryes as a rule.
Mm-hmm.
It's my palate goes more to spice than sweet.
Yeah.
And as I said, everything I want to do is going to be less sweet anyway. So bourbon, I drink a fair amount of bourbon, especially when I'm judging.
Uh-huh.
And I do judge bourbons. Spent a week about 4 weeks ago judging whiskeys for the International Wine Spirits Competition in
Okay.
England.
Oh, awesome.
So arguably the oldest and most prestigious competition on the planet.
Yeah.
And not only did I drink a fair amount of bourbon and judge a fair amount of bourbon, but one of my friends who's kind of a big name in the Scottish whiskey world literally turned around and said, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable judging American whiskey. Steve Gould's in the building. Can I swap with him?"
Yeah.
And so he ended up getting I was scheduled to do a Speyside day
Okay.
and ended up judging 2 days of American instead of 1 day of American, 1 day of Speyside.
Okay.
I still got Highland.
Yeah.
I did a day of Highland. I did a day of Korean, Taiwanese, Indian, Myanmar, Georgia, and then I did a couple of days of Scottish blended.
Myanmar?
Myanmar makes whiskey.
Myanmar makes whiskey. That's
insane. There are distilleries there. I don't know what their processes are. I will tell you that what they tasted was very Scottish,
Okay.
and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Interesting. I got to travel the world more.
The one main whiskey category I didn't judge this year that I really wish I had is Japanese.
Japanese whiskey. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of some of what's going on in Japan.
Definitely.
In fact, I'm going in January just to tour distilleries.
Yeah. No, my fiance, we're kind of contemplating Japan as maybe a honeymoon option, and I would definitely have to visit some distilleries.
Well,
it would turn into a work trip pretty quick.
I have to go to Hokkaido. I lived in Japan. In my corporate career, I worked in Japan. I actually went to high school in Japan for a year.
Oh, nice.
For the better part of a year.
Okay.
And the one main island in the Japanese chain, and the Japanese chain has thousands of islands, but there's four main islands.
Yeah.
The one main island I've not been is Hokkaido, which is the northernmost island.
Okay.
And what's important about that to the whiskey world is that is where Tetsutsura-san built his first distillery that he owned.
Yeah.
So this is the gentleman that went to Scotland in the 30s and trained as a Scottish whiskeyman, and then built distilleries on Honshu, which is the big island. And those distilleries all still exist and make some of the biggest brands in Japanese whiskey.
Right.
And then he moved to Hokkaido, and he built a small distillery for himself that produces Nika. And so I have to go to his distillery. I've just got to do it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be in January. I'm going to ski a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit his distillery.
Yeah, okay.
I may hit a couple other distilleries, and it's going to be a good time.
Very cool. No, that will be fun. God, I'm jealous. All right, well, Japanese whiskey, excellent. Well, cool. Let's try the Genepi then.
Okay, let's talk about the Genepi.
Yeah.
So, Genepes are a style of liquor or liqueur. They can be both, meaning with or without added sugar, that are produced in the mountainous regions across Europe.
Okay.
Anywhere that any of the family of wormwoods or Artemisia botanicals grow, you're going to find somebody using members of this family to make spirit.
Okay.
So the most famous Genepi is a modified Genepi called Chartreuse.
Right.
Made by the Carthusian monks. They claim over 140 herbs, spices, and botanicals. I don't know. I've never seen their recipe, but then again, who has, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's so many myths about it.
There's so many myths about it.
I
It's
used
a
to
beautiful
bartend.
spirit.
I used to manage bars, and so that's the thing: the green, the yellow, all that.
Well, but so that Chartreuse is one of many what could be referred to as complex or modified Genepes. But then you find families of simple Genepes. So Dolan makes a couple. Les Alpines, for example, which is a liqueur made with just Artemisia alpina, Alpine Genepi.
Yeah.
Dolan makes another that's made with, I believe, white Genepi that's just called Dolan Genepi. But there's lots of other Genepes out there. And then here's where it gets weird. Azara, which is a liqueur which comes in a yellow and a green in the Pyrenees, on the French side of the Pyrenees, is a modified Genepi. Not dissimilar from Chartreuse, but with a slightly different bouquet, if you will, a slightly different palate.
All right.
Malort, Jeppson's Malort.
Yep.
It's a Swedish style of Genepi known as a Brask Brandvin. Wow, hard to say.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're right.
Known as a Brask Brandvin.
Okay.
The Jeppsons claims that they bought the recipe from Sweden. It was made for years in Chicago. It's now made down in Florida.
Yeah.
But it uses lesser wormwoods as the main flavoring ingredient.
Okay.
And wormwoods can be incredibly bitter.
Right.
And it's got a place in the Chicago market. I actually love drinking it.
Yeah, no, Malort, I just had some recently when I was last in Chicago. So yeah, it's my first time being introduced to it. It's great.
One of the coolest cocktails I ever had was a bar in Chicago. I participated in the bare knuckle bar fight at Tails a few years ago.
Okay.
And I forget the name of the bar. I apologize. I give them a plug, but I totally blanked on it.
Right.
But they did a bottled low alcohol Malort soda.
Okay.
It was absolutely amazing. It was one of the coolest cocktails I've ever had. So, needless to say, I like wormwoods.
Right.
So, back to my library.
Okay.
I make absinthe. I make all these other weird things.
Right.
So a few years ago, I acquired part of a notebook from a hangman that operated in Bavaria in the 1580s. And so the hangmen at that period of time in that part of the world were as much healers as they were killers.
Right.
They were all apothecaries, and the poor, the people that couldn't afford to go to a doctor, would typically go to the executioner or the midwife or the bathhouse owner for medical treatment.
Wow.
And so the hangman had an herbal tradition, which is well documented, of making herbal and botanical based elixirs, what we would know in the modern world as liquors and liqueurs, that they would give for healing purposes.
Right.
The other thing they had was a tradition of giving the condemned a dose of one of their best elixirs as a last act of kindness, an unremitting act of kindness, the Latin word for which is ex gratia, the name of our Genepi.
Okay.
So in these pages from this German hangman's notebook, I found not a formula, but just sort of a description of an elixir made with high alpine herbs, clearly referring to wormwoods. The word Genepi was used.
Yeah.
And a spice called black spice, which is one of the most prized medicinal spices of the Middle Ages.
Okay.
The scientific name is Nigella sativa. It's something that you probably are familiar with and don't even know it. So you've been to Indian restaurants, right?
Yeah.
You know that crackly, real thin bread
Yeah.
with the black specks?
Oh, it's great.
It's the black specks.
Okay.
That's what that is, Nigella sativa. So I'd never seen it referred to in any sort of alcohol spirit before. So I went into my library and I started looking at how historical Genepes were put together. Did some experimentation with Nigella sativa and a few of the other uncommon herbs in the formula, or in the description rather than a formula, that I had, and I came up with the formula for Ex Gratia.
Okay.
So it is, the way I like to describe it, people say, oh, you make your own Chartreuse. It's not a Chartreuse, it's not a Chartreuse clone. It's a distant cousin in that family of spirits.
So I guess, like, what is so distinctive about Genepe? Like,
so Genepe is a family of herbs which typically are bitter,
okay,
not always, and have a variety of fairly unique flavors. Grand wormwood,
okay,
or Artemisia absinthium is where absinthe gets its name.
Okay.
Absinthe typically will have one or two other members of the family.
Right.
Most notably Roman wormwood, also known as Artemisia pontica.
Right.
But then you have many, many other types of wormwoods that are used in alcohol beverage.
Okay.
You have sea wormwood, rock wormwood, black wormwood, yellow wormwood, white wormwood. It goes on.
Okay. I guess my question is, like, okay, in order to call it a bourbon, there's parameters. 51%, corn.
There is
aged.
no legal definition, but there's trade accepted definitions.
Oh, okay, for the Genepe.
So for a Genepe and for an absinthe.
Okay.
For an absinthe that has to, at a minimum, and this is trade accepted but is not codified in law, have 3 botanicals in it.
Okay.
And those have to be grand wormwood, which is Artemisia absinthium,
Okay.
green anise,
Okay.
and sweet fennel.
Okay.
So if it has those 3 botanicals in it, it's considered an absinthe.
Right.
If it doesn't, it's not.
Okay.
A Genepe, on the other hand, to be a Genepe needs only one ingredient, and that is any member of the Artemisia family. Common slang in much of Europe is Genepe.
Okay.
So any of the Genepes as an ingredient would make it a Genepe. Though having said that, you do find vermouths will have Artemisias in them.
Okay.
And many of your Amaros will have Artemisia in them as well, and will be considered an Amaro and not a Genepe.
So it's almost like a gin. A Genepe only has to contain at least those herbs from that family that you just mentioned.
Right. The difference
And
is
then gin, in order to call it a gin, it has to have juniper berries.
It has to
have juniper.
It has to be the predominant input.
The predominant input. Okay, that's
has to be juniper to be a gin.
Okay.
Not necessarily the predominant flavor in the U.S., but by weight, the heaviest botanical.
The heaviest botanical.
And that's how TTB looks at it.
Right.
In Europe, the Europeans are going to say the predominant flavor needs to be juniper.
Got it.
But they're pretty loose on how they interpret that.
Okay.
I mean, I have a friend that makes a strawberries and cream gin in the UK.
Awesome.
And he's actually putting real cream and real strawberries into the still.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, it's a pretty damn palatable spirit.
That sounds great.
It's bizarre. But it's still considered a gin under European law.
Huh.
It's weird. It's cool.
That is. Well, cheers. Thank you. Mm. You get a little bit of like the licorice, you get a little bit of the anise.
So there's a little fennel in there, and so the anethol, that liquor, the chemical that creates that licorice taste.
Yeah.
You're going to get a little bit of anethol in this.
Okay.
Just a touch, because we do use fennel.
Right.
We use a lot of hyssop.
Okay.
Which is also used in our gin and our absinthe and several other products. We use a huge amount of it in this, and that gives it a nice tannic note, almost that green tea characteristic you're getting.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that green tea.
We use 3 different types of Genepe.
Okay.
And a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, the secret.
That's the secret.
That's the secret.
I'm pretty open about what I do, but there's certain formulas I'm just not going to advertise.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's really fun. Wow. Okay.
And that is 50%.
50%. Okay. Again, high proof. Golden. Yeah.
And it's great
Golden
to sip
Moon
neat.
Distillery.
I
High
haven't met a
proof.
bartender that doesn't like this.
Yeah.
Bartenders go crazy over this. It makes beautiful cocktails. People don't really know how to use Genovese in cocktails
Yeah.
because they're an ingredient that sort of disappeared from the U.S. market during Prohibition.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite thing to do with this is one of the most famous Chartreuse cocktails is the Bijou.
Okay.
And what I like to do is I use this instead of Chartreuse. I use our gin, and instead of a red or sweet vermouth, which a classic Bijou has in it, I use a Bianco vermouth.
Yeah.
And so it's equal parts Golden Moon gin, Golden Moon ex gratia, and my go-to for this cocktail is Dolan Bianco.
Okay.
And served up with a lemon twist. It's an awesome
Solid.
cocktail, and not only that, it's the single best accompaniment I've ever found for caviar, even better than champagne.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's get some caviar. And we'll do that tonight. It is my bachelor party weekend.
It is
So
indeed.
we'll do that.
Did everyone hear that? It's his bachelor party weekend.
Yeah. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good weekend. I don't know what, a couple more craft distilleries maybe. That's really all I really want to do is visit craft distilleries, but I guess, we gotta drink and do stuff too. Anyway. Well, that is fantastic. That's good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So I gotta ask this just because it's a fun question to ask. So you're building quite the little empire, I want to say, with like your spirits and your expansion. Is there any thoughts on where would you take this in the future?
What do you mean, where would I take
say for instance somebody approached to, a lot of businesses, they build a business to sell.
I'm not looking to sell this company.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not sure, I'm 54. When I'm 64, I'm not sure I want to be running this every day.
Right.
We don't have investors today. We are looking at bringing in a minority group of investors. We're going to be doing what is functioning a mezzanine round. So we just finished a large debt round.
Okay.
It's an SBA funded loan or underwritten loan. We work with a lender called Live Oak Bank. They're the largest alcohol lender in the country.
I know them well.
I love Live Oak.
Yeah.
We're pleased to have them as a business partner.
Good.
But then we're going to do what's called the Founder's Circle. And we're finalizing the details, but it's going to be 50 tranches, $50,000 a tranche. You get the contents of a barrel of whiskey with each tranche, plus a really cool distiller's jacket. You get your name on the wall of the distillery, and you get to be a part of helping us grow.
Very cool.
And there'll be a good return on the back end. So we're getting ready to pull the trigger on that here in the next couple of months. We're really excited about that. We already have, even though we're not advertising, we're telling people we're not ready to even talk final details.
Right.
About a quarter of those tranches are already, I'm not going to say pre-sold, but people have said, please, when you do this, let us know. Mm-hmm. So, I've got to get through all the legalese before I can sell anything.
Yeah.
But, we've got people, I get calls probably 2-3 times a week.
Wow.
Where people say, we're interested in investing.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a couple of people, heavy hitters come in and say, we want to take big pieces of it. And I've said no.
Yeah. That's good.
So we're doing some really unique things. We've been really blessed that people in the bartending community and the food community have seen what we're doing and taken an interest in us. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited.
As is.
This has been a long run.
Yeah.
We founded what is now Golden Moon in 2008.
Yeah.
So, and I've been distilling off and on since 1991. And, I've had my hands as a consultant in, 15, 20 other distilleries in one way, shape, or form. I mean, there's a dozen absinthes out there on the market today that I've had some input into their formulas. There's dozens of absinthe distillers that I've trained at some level. There's probably 3 dozen gins that I've had input in around the world being produced by other people.
Okay.
There are hundreds of distillers that have taken classes that I've taught on botanicals, on brandy production, on whiskey production, on basic fermentation. So we've really been able to get out in the marketplace and have an input on the industry as well.
Yeah.
And now it's time for what started as a hobby business.
Yeah.
Because I've been fascinated by distilling and around distilling for going on 28 years.
Right.
Like I said, 27 and a half years ago, I filed for my first distillery basic permit.
Wow.
And then was unable to bring that to realization. So it's been a long run.
Yeah.
But here we are, and future's so bright that I hate to say it, I got to wear shades.
You gotta wear shades. Well,
corny as all hell, right?
No, that's great. I love it. Well, that's great. Well, again, congratulations. And I think that's probably a good spot to wrap it up.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks for
definitely.
coming by.
Definitely.
By the way, congratulations on your upcoming nuptials.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And,
Yes.
you know,
Cheers, September. Yeah. A few months away. I got some time, you know.
not much.
Yeah.
It's coming up incredibly fast.
Right?
Just remember that marriage is a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work.
I put in the time. We've been together for 13 years.
Oh my God,
It's
you're
a-
already married.
Yeah, exactly.
You're already married. In fact, I got news for you. Under Colorado law, you're already married.
Yeah, no. That's great. All right, well, cheers, Stephen. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Cool.